Tonight, All-Star Western lets Dr. Arkham really let it all hang out. The Flash sets the new world record for the world's fastest coma. And Justice League Dark gives us the new adventures of Deadman as Alive Man. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 70 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host and Happy New Year's! Technically I'm like a day late. This is coming out January 2nd, but first time I'm seeing you since the New Year's rolled over, so once again, Happy New Year's. I hope that all of your New Year's resolutions have managed to hold up for at least 24 hours. Mine has. But that's mainly because my New Year's resolution is to read a boatload of old comic books and then talk about them for an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes every week. So, doing good so far. Speaking of doing good, I no longer have COVID. So, I'm just going to make sure that I don't ever go outside again or interact with anybody in any meaningful way. And that way, next Christmas, I will be sure to be able to enjoy it. That's my plan. That's how I'm going to do this. And I'm just going to keep that rolling for the next 12 months. So I hope you can understand that. Anyway, comics. There are a bunch of them. So why don't we start talking about them? But first, to let you know what's coming up, we have the number 15 issues of Batman, The Dark Knight, Superman, Red Lanterns, The Flash, The Fury of Firestorm, The Savage Hawkman, All-Star Western, Teen Titans, I, Vampire, and Justice League Dark. Additionally, we have the number 6 issue of Batman Incorporated and the number 3 issue of Talon. As for events, well, there's always events, aren't there? So we have Superman is part of Hell on Earth. Teen Titans is part of Death of the Family. All-Star Western, part of Black Diamond Probability. Red Lanterns, part of Rise of the Third Army. And Savage Hawkman is technically still part of Hawkman Wanted. But, is that really an event? My sources say yes, but I don't like my sources, so screw them. Anyway, that's enough from me. Let's get into the comics, shall we? Teen Titans number 15, written by Scott Lobdell and Fabian Nicieza, art by Brett Booth. Last issue had 18 plots, all going in different directions, but the one we're following here is the tie-in to Death of the Family. So, the Teen Titans have made their way to Gotham, and they call up Batgirl, and there's this whole overarching thing where Tim Drake is the one who's narrating, and he's like, I purposely set this plan into motion if things ever got bad and the team needed me. And here's how I imagine it would go. And it's literally him playing 4D chess and describing everything that we see in comics exactly as he predicted it. So, turns out that if he was ever in trouble, he had a phone in his room that only had one unencrypted number, and that one number was for Batgirl. So he knew the Teen Titans would go in and get his phone because he's been missing for a while. I'm gonna let that slide. I'm just not even going to worry about the fact that he's literally predicting everything perfectly. So Batgirl shows up and she's like, oh God, you're a bunch of teenagers. What do you want? There is so much crap going on in Gotham tonight. And they're like, we kind of lost Red Robin. He hasn't called back. Is there anything we should know about? And Kid Flash is getting all goo-goo-eyed at her. And Batgirl's just like, yeah, Joker's kind of around right now. We're kind of doing Death of the Family. So, yeah, he's in a lot of trouble if he's around town, so I'll help you out a little bit. And then we go to where he is being held, which is apparently the old Diamond District, which I didn't even know there was a Diamond District, but he wakes up and he's in his original Red Robin outfit, which looks to me to be the exact same as the current one, save for he doesn't have the stupid feather cape, he just has a normal cape. And he's like, he put me in my old outfit. There must be a reason. He's trying to recreate something. And then he looks up and is like, Joker, I know you're up there. And Joker responds wearing his feather cape, just being like, oh man, hi, how's it going? Here's the thing. I don't like you. The first one was okay. I mean, he was a little quippy for me, but he was fine. The second one, he earned his pain because Scott Lobdell is also writing that book, so we got to make it sound like he's super cool. But you were just perfect from the beginning. You're so cool, and no one likes a show off. So, yeah, he basically tells him the whole thing of, oh, you're making Batman weaker and blah, blah, blah. So, at that point, he just says, he doesn't even say he's going to kill Tim. He's literally just saying, like, but I know all about your team of Teen Titans. And Tim's like, oh no, he knows about our team. He'll get out all of them. So Batgirl's talking to the team, and she's like, hey, can someone get a map of Gotham so I can, like, show you where it could be? Kid Flash zooms off and grabs one, and he's like, she points out, okay, here's all the places where Joker has, like, done previous crimes. That's pretty much where he's only been showing up for all of these issues. So he's going to be at one of these, like, 8 locations. Solstice and Kid Flash, you take these 4. Wonder Girl and Bunker, you take those. And she somehow knows their names, but it's not super clear as to how. Like, they're like, how do you know us? And she's just like, I'm part of the Bat family. Anyway, so Batgirl's like, all right, well, I've got my own book to deal with, and you are literally interrupting me in the middle of my Death of the Family story, so I'm going to go back to that. Peace out. And as she's leaving, Wonder Girl stops her and is like, hey, real quick, should we assume Tim is dead? She says Red Robin, but should we assume he's dead? And Batgirl's like, probably not. Joker really likes to talk, but, you know, hurry it up anyway. So at that point, Kid Flash and Solstice zoom off. They kind of have a weird little romantic moment as Kid Flash pants a mugger. Because, yeah, why not? And they make their way to a housing complex that Batgirl pointed out. And he zooms in, he goes all around the place. All he sees is, like, homeless people and people who are struggling just to survive. And he's like, all right, well, there was a bunch of sad things in there, but I didn't see Red Robin. But as he was running through, he was kicking up a whole lot of dust. And that comes back in a minute. So we go back to Joker, who's still taunting Red Robin. It's just like, hey, I know that your team doesn't know your real name, and I do know your real name. And so I'm going to kill them before they can ever find out that truth. And immediately Red Robin's just like, he's lying. And Joker's like, I bet you're thinking that I'm lying. And he just starts walking through this whole thing of, like, pointing out all these things with the Teen Titans. But every time he's about to say, like, yes, the threat posed by your team, I'm sorry, they are literally a Bieber squad. Like, they are tiny little tots. I don't care about them at all, which is why it's going to be so much easier to kill them. And we see how he set up this whole plan that Kid Flash was going to run through this building. It was going to kick up a whole bunch of Joker dust that was settled on the ground, and it would Jokerize everybody nearby. And Tim's like, oh no, my team, they're too stupid to realize that. And Joker's like, yeah, they are. So Wonder Girl and Bunker, they're waiting for a call from Kid Flash because they said they'd call back every, like, 10 minutes, make sure everything's all right. They're not answering the call, but then they look across the harbor and they see Solstice just blowing up an energy signature. And they're like, all right, well, that's clearly where they are. Let's go get them. And when they make their way over, we see that the plan has gone perfectly. Joker's plan, that is. And Kid Flash and Solstice are being held captive by a whole bunch of Jokerized people. And they say how their powers feel like they're being supercharged at the moment, but they still somehow can't get out of this mess. And we see that Kurt Lance is supercharging them nearby. And then they say, see Birds of Prey 15, which I swear to God has nothing to do with that. But even in this trade, they removed that editor's note. So it's literally a panel of Kurt Lance and then a panel of Black Canary for no reason. And then they just continue on with the story. This is horrible layout. So anyway, Bunker shows up. They're all together now. They realize they're surrounded by Jokerized goons. And Tim Drake says, narration is like, they aren't ready. They can't do it without me. The team will go down. What hope does Gotham have? And we see Roy Harper, aka Arsenal, and Starfire showing up and being like, hey, we're here to help you. Because that happened at the end of Red Hood 15. Okay, so yeah, it's a mess. The story itself is not inherently bad. It's a fine enough little like, okay, they've split up and Joker's got his own machinations and they're taking down the whole of the Teen Titans for no particular reason, especially because Joker only really cares about the Robins. So that's a bit messy as is. But then just honestly, that one panel of Kurt Lance and Black Canary, like, if I wasn't reading a version that had the editor's notes in there, that genuinely would have driven me mad as to why they just included a random-ass panel of Black Canary for no reason. It's just, it's... I don't even know who to put that on. It's not even writing. I think it's editing. It is literally the editor who was like, hey, check out this previous issue, where, like, if they had just said, like, maybe assume that we remember that Kurt Lance was in the last issue, which he was. So I don't get it. Anyway, this one, I'll give it like a... I'm going to give it like a 4.5, and that's mainly just because I'm so tired of this. Like, it's not this book's fault that it's one of the last ones to do a Death of the Family tie-in, but it is its fault that it didn't do anything new with it. It is literally just, the Joker wants Batman to be better. Oh my god. So, yeah, I give it a 4.5. And I don't expect better in the Red Hood, which is apparently the continuation of this next month. Superman number 15, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Kenneth Rocafort. This is the next part of Hell on Earth, and in the last issue, technically it was a Supergirl issue, but the only part that's relevant is that Superman got thrown out of the Fortress of Solitude, along with Superboy, and they gotta go find something to do. So, we open up with Lex Luthor, who is looking over his little model of the Fortress of Solitude, and apparently he's been studying it for years, trying to find some way in, because he knows that's going to be the key to destroying Superman. And all of a sudden, he stops and he's like, I have visitors. And we see outside is Superman and Superboy being blasted by the American military. And they're coming down and landing on the secure military base. And basically they're told, like, hey, Superman, if you come any closer, it'll be an act of war. And Superman's like, dude, shut up. I am so not in the mood today. I just need to talk to your prisoner inside. And we see it's this big, like, crystal gem looking place in the middle of the desert. And Superboy's like, I'm sorry, did you say prisoner? Singular? This whole place is built to store only one guy? And Superman's like, yeah, shut up, kid. Okay, Mr. General guy. I gotta get in there. The world, the universe itself is in danger. And the general's like, this is why people don't like you, Superman. You got all that power and you're just bullying other people. And he's like, okay, whatever. I do need to get in, though. And the general's like, fine, whatever. You got 10 minutes. Fine, whatever. So he just walks in with Superboy. We see Lex is brushing his teeth, taking a shave, and it's just like, oh boy, I sure hope Superman remembers me. And turns out, this is a prison that is built specifically to contain Lex Luthor. And they make their way to this big door that it's for some reason they realize it's going to hurt, but like they don't explain why. They just say it's a big door. So at that point, Superboy's like, hey, real quick, Superman, because we're going into this prison. Am I your prisoner? It feels like I'm not allowed to leave. And Superman's like, that's because you're wearing my clothes. I'm not going to let you take off with my battle armor. And the clothes are currently keeping you all in one piece. So, like, yeah, you're not a prisoner, but you're a person of interest. So they make their way inside, and there's a bunch more guards, but apparently they're all holograms. And the air is apparently 83% ammonium nitrate. So, like, everybody would die inside unless you're in the cells in the middle. So, anyway, they make their way down some hallways, and turns out that this prison was created by Lex Luthor to contain Lex Luthor. And it was only created because Superman basically taunted Lex and was like, hey, I bet you can't make a prison even you can't get out of. And Lex is like, shut up, I totally can. So he did. We see as they're making their way down some hallways, the floor reacts like it's some antibodies, and it's finding the weak points of Superboy as soon as he steps on the ground, because they're just kind of floating their way down there otherwise. Immediately they take care of it. It's not even a problem. And then Superman's like, yeah, okay, here's the thing. Superboy, you're kind of dragging me down, but I really need you nearby. So if we could just try not to like touch anything for a while, okay? So they make their way into the center area, and there's Lex. He's just standing above like a pit of nothingness with cannons aimed at him. And Superman's like, all right, put on your shackles, Lex. And he's like, yeah, I know. And he puts on the shackles, and they just start going at one another verbally. And it's worth noting that Lex has a whole lot of scars on his face. And Lex is like, yeah, here's the thing. I know you're here because of Hale. And Superman's like, how do you know about Hale? And he's like, I have my ways. But I've been watching him, who's been watching you. And I know that he wants to do all these things of bringing Krypton back. And Superman's like, all right, well, the only reason I came here is I want to know, is there any way that we can let him go back in time and bring Krypton back without having everybody on Earth die? And Lex is like, nope. And he says that he'll help him, he'll explain more, but he wants to talk to Superboy first. And literally the entire conversation is like, Superboy, wow, hey, you are quite a piece of work. You are art. And Superboy's like, shut up, old man, I don't like you. And Lex is like, you ever talk like that again, I'm going to personally rip apart your DNA, like strand by strand. And Superboy's like, fine, you suck. So Lex explains that they got all the energy they needed from the bottle city of Kandor in order to go back in time, but in order to shield a ship that can sustain doing that, they would have to literally destroy the entirety of the solar system. So, yeah, odds are not good that they'd be able to survive that. So, yeah, Krypton can come back, but the Earth would have to go. And Superman's like, all right, well, that's cool. And Lex is like, but you already know all this. So the only reason you're here, as I've deduced, is that you want to be able to look at me and make sure you know what it takes to do what needs to be done. You're going to beat Hell up the same way you beat me up and gave me all these scars. You want to know how I got these scars? The writer has yet to determine that. But Superman definitely did it. And Superman's like, all right, well, that's enough of that. Bye, Lex. And so they leave, and Lex is like, all right, well, you may have failed the whole human race this time, just because Kryptonians like you exist. So they exit the facility, and Superboy's like, huh, okay. Hey, I've got some friends that can help if the issue here is like power levels. I got to Teen Titans, and Superman's like, are you talking about a team of superheroes that are completely unregulated and unsupervised? And Superboy's like, yeah. And Superman's like, we'll talk about that later. But how about instead of that, we use my team of superheroes that are completely unregulated and unsupervised. And the entire Justice League shows up, or at least Flash, Cyborg, Batman, Wonder Woman. And they're just like, hey, we're here because Superman activated his distress beacon for like literally the first time ever. So we figure it must be something serious. Also, they have a whole thing about how he really wants to just run up to Wonder Woman and give her a whole bunch of kisses. But anyway, they say, all right, Superman, why'd you call? And Superman's like, we probably got like a half an hour until Hell on Earth ends, and he's going to destroy the entire solar system, so we got to head out like now. And they're like, all right, cool. And they just start going up to, I assume, the Fortress of Solitude again. It was a fine enough structured issue. It was kind of just a pacer where it's like, all right, we need Superman to team up with Justice League, and also we need to explain why it is the Earth has to die for Krypton to live, because they, over the course of what has been now like 6-7 issues in this event, they still haven't really said that. So they had to really take the time here being like, yeah, no. He got all the energy he needs to go back in time from Kandor, but it's the other thing that is going to rip apart the space-time continuum. So, yeah, it's an iffy issue, but I do think it is well enough structured. And the art, Kenneth Rocafort, does look good. I do have an issue with a lot of the backgrounds being just totally empty. Like, it's just whatever figure they're looking at, whatever person is in panel looks great, but then there's nothing. There's no detail behind that. And I don't know, it strikes me as a bit lazy after a little bit. But it's a fine enough issue. I'm going to give it a 6. And Hell on Earth continues. There's not much more to say about that. Red Lanterns number 15, written by Peter Milligan, art by Miguel Sepulveda. This is the continuation of Rise of the Third Army. And last issue there were like 8 different plots, but the main one was Atrocitus went back to his homeworld and thought that it was all being attacked by the Manhunters all over again. So this issue picks up with hand of a Red Lantern, the ring still attached to it, trying to make its way back to its homeworld, and Zilius Zox and Scalix show up, and they're like, poor little thing didn't have enough energy to make it back home. Well, hopefully Atrocitus can find some way to power up our battery a bit more. And we see Atrocitus back on his homeworld of watching everyone he loves die again, and he's just like, nope, not doing this. And he grabs one of the Manhunters and like throws it down to the ground and sees that it is all just an illusion, despite the fact that he literally opens up this book by saying this is no hallucination. So I'm a little confused on that, but regardless, he is like, okay, I get what's going on, and he reaches down into the ground and pulls out this creature, which apparently is some sort of space predator that like forces hallucinations. And he's like, well, this thing is not guilty of anything except for being a dick. That's going to have to do. So he cuts open it and uses blood magic in order to reveal the entirety of the army of the Manhunters, which I guess were magically hidden by Atrocitus way back. So they're all just there, and Atrocitus is so pissed off, he starts beating them up and tearing off their heads and whatnot. And he's like, okay, got that out of my system. Now I need to bring you all back into working order because the Guardians have made yet another stupid-ass army of unthinking, unfeeling things. So I need you guys to save us. Then we cut to the Earth plot, where Rancor and Bleez have made their way to Earth in order to have Rancor kill the guy who killed his grandfather. But first he really wants to talk to his brother, so he goes to his brother's house, sees that his bro's become a drunken slob. He busts it and he's like, brother, I know this has been hard on us, but you need to, listen to me. Granddad wouldn't have wanted your life to end up like this. And he starts freaking out because this giant red monster looking thing just busted into his house. And he's like, Ray, it's me, it's your brother. Come on, listen to me. And he's like, oh, geez, what happened to you? You look like a nightmare. And trust me, I know a lot about nightmares. And he's like, yeah, sorry. It's just the way I am now. I literally do not have a choice in this matter. And Ray's like, what do you want? Get away from me. And he's like, you remember what he did to grandfather, what he did to me. And it causes him to get so emotional, he makes a construct that terrifies the living crap out of his brother. And Bleez is like, all right, well, that was impressive, I guess. But, I mean, are you good? Can we move on now? And he's just like, I'm filled with rage at the one who killed my grandfather. Every part of me craves to punish him. And Bleez is like, all right, this was literally pointless. Let's just go do the thing then. So we go back to Atrocitus, and he's like, all right, you all are still technically in sleep mode. I just need to use my Red Lantern energy to power y'all up. Fortunately, I don't have a lot of that right now, so I'm going to use my own blood to power up the magic of the ring, and then it'll charge you all up. So he does that, and he's like, haha, now I control you all. You all are mine. And then we go on the side plot of Dexter. And if you remember Dexter, he heard that Rancor was going to Earth. He got really pissed off because he remembered Midnighter punched him in the face during a Stormwatch issue, I think. And he's like, I'm going to go get revenge on him. So he goes to some completely different sector where there is a space cop who's just arresting a whole bunch of horrible space criminals. But the space cop has an outfit with a spike on its chin. So it reminds Dexter of Midnighter, and he attacks him. And that's it. That's the plot. I genuinely don't know what further we're going in with that. Anyway, back down on Earth, we see a police officer's giving some sort of protective custody to Baxter, the guy who killed the grandfather. And Rancor shows up, grabs Baxter, and be like, you killed my grandfather, now prepare to die. And as he looks over at the police officer nearby, he sees that half of the police officer's face is like burned off. And it turns out that this is the guy that when Rancor first transformed into a Red Lantern and couldn't control his powers, he accidentally sprayed his like napalm onto this cop and burned half his face off. And Rancor's like, I'm sure you must want vengeance against me. And the cop's like, yeah, I did for a really long time, but hey, I got over it. And the skin grafts are kind of taken, don't you think? So then we see Bleeze comes down, grabs Baxter by the head, and just be like, all right, do it. Go ahead, get your vengeance, because I'm sure you haven't learned any morals about how vengeance is wrong in the interstitial period between when you landed to now. Am I right? So that leaves off on a cliffhanger. We see Zilius and Scalix arriving back on the Red Lantern planet, and they're talking to Ratchet, who's apparently the guardian of the battery. And they're like, hey, Ratchet, why is our blood stuff not making the battery stronger? And Ratchet's like, I have a theory that the whole planet has a rage anemia. That's my working thing right now. And we see down beneath the surface of the planet the 4 inversions that Atrocitus used to be all buddy-buddy with are still down there. And she'd be like, God, that guy's an idiot. He doesn't even know about us, the inversions, making him all weak. Ha! We'll get our arc soon enough. So then we go last page over to Atrocitus, and he's like, hey, Manhunters, your whole thing is no man escapes the Manhunters. That's your old thing. But now I am your master, and I need you to listen to me. And then they all fire up their shots and blast Atrocitus seemingly into a million itty-bitty atomic pieces. So apparently they don't listen that well. I liked it. I think it was a solid, like every one of the pieces worked, save for the Dexter plot. As much as I enjoy Dexter as a character, who wouldn't love an angry little space kitty, it just felt so weirdly misplaced here. Like, Dexter was going to Earth to get revenge on Midnighter, but then he didn't go to Earth, and he didn't attack Midnighter. It was just a different place and a different guy who vaguely looked the same. It was a little bit weird for me. It didn't seem like it really flowed, but we just had to get a little cutaway of what's Dexter up to now. He's in space jail. So overall, though, I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7. I think it was a decently well-built issue. The Atrocitus stuff, it felt like last issue ended on an unnecessary cliffhanger considering how fast he fixed it. And I'm getting the vibe that it's going to be the same way here again, where it looks like he's been killed, but like in 3 panels it's going to be the Manhunters just sent their things to stun instead. It's like, okay, sure, whatever. So maybe cut back on the cliffhangers, but overall, decent issue. All-Star Western number 15, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Moritat. Last issue left off with Arkham coming to visit Dr. Jekyll and his servant, his assistant, whatever you want to call it. Can't even remember his name. But turns out Hyde already killed the assistant, of course, and looks like he's going to kill Jekyll or Arkham as well. But as we start this issue, turns out that he is actually going to just do a little experiment, and he is giving Arkham the concentrated serum, medicine, whatever you want to call it, that turned him into Hyde. And he's like, I wonder what it's going to do to you, because you are such a meek, frail, and tiny little man. I want to see what you can do with it. And he gives him just like a few drops of it and then toss him aside before drinking a whole lot of it himself. And as we see Arkham like starting to succumb to it, Hex breaks in and he's like, Reggie, that's the name of the guy, Reggie. Reggie, I want my money. And as he comes in, he's like, hey, who are you and where's Reggie? And he's like, I'm Hyde and I ate Reggie. So yeah, also behind you. And we see Arkham is lunging after Hex, starting to attack him. And he's like, you're just kind of feral. That's disappointing. I wanted you to do something more like perverted. So Hex just bashes aside Arkham, knocks him off. And then it's just a claw-out fight between Hyde and Hex. And basically before Hex even has time to respond to it, he is picked up by Hyde and thrown out a window. And they're really high up. They're in like the penthouse. So Hex is taking a tumble. He hits a few little side roofs on the ways down, but he's like, oh, this is going to hurt. And he crashes through the roof of the bar below and literally shatters his right leg. Like, it's very graphic imagery. And they're just like, oh, guy, you need a doctor. And he's like, I don't need a doctor. There's a guy up there. He's a murderer. I got to get back up there. And we see Hyde basically he's smacking around Arkham, just being like, seriously, you clearly have some sort of sexual frustration being the way you are. Why are you not more perverted? Why are you just going with the violent side? And Arkham's like, oh, let me show you how violent I am. And he pulls out a knife and he lunges after Hyde. And Hyde just grabs him by the throat being like, dude, you are like 120 pounds soaking wet. I am quite literally the size of a house. You do not stand a chance here. And he takes the knife from Arkham and puts it into his leg. As we see, Hex is trying to make his way up the stairs. He's literally just crawling his way up. And again, they were like a good 4 or 5 stories up. So yeah, it's going to take some time. But somehow Hex manages to make it up there before Hyde kills Arkham. And he bashes him in the back of the head with a chair. And he's like, Arkham, I'm going to need your help taking this guy down. And Arkham's just like, screw you, Hex, I'm out. And he just runs out the door. So the fight continues on, but this time Hex does manage to keep just a little bit of his wits around him. He gets the upper hand in the fight just enough to bash Hyde out the window this time. And Hyde is able to grab onto the nearby rooftop and he makes his escape into the night. And he's like, we'll meet again, Jonah Hex. And of course, just then the police arrive, being as useless as they ever are. And Hex just tells the police, like, hey, I've got an associate who is poisoned. He's acting crazy. You need to find him. That guy who just escaped is a murderer. You need to find him. And someone help me reset my leg so I can go after them as well. And it's just like, dude, you really need a doctor. He's like, literally chasing a murderer. Help me now. So they reset his leg and put a splint on it. And then he starts limping his way out the door trying to find Arkham. And Arkham is down in the saloon below that literally had the roof crashed in a few minutes ago. He finds a woman nearby and he's like, you there with the lovely bosoms, come over here and give daddy a kiss. And she's like, I will smack the ever-loving hell out of you. And he's just like, good, I like a little bit of fight. And she does come over and just smacks the ever-loving crap out of him. And as Hex and the police arrive, they're like, Arkham, you've been poisoned. You're a little crazy. Need you to calm down. And he hides behind the woman, just be like, my future wife will show you a thing or two. And she's like, I don't even know this guy. And Hex is like, seriously though, Arkham, your mind's a little bit messed up. And he's like, I'm a brain doctor. I think I can tell whether or not I've been poisoned. I'll examine myself. And then he just drops his pants and the police tackle him. Just, all right, well, that's that. So they throw him in his own asylum. He's in an asylum. I guess I don't know it is Arkham Asylum, but he's all wrapped up in a straitjacket, and a nurse is taking care of Hex and basically telling him, like, hey, I know you really want to be up and out and you want to go chase down that guy, but if you literally do anything with that leg for the next like few months, you will not be able to ever walk again. So you got to chill in this chair and I will take care of you. And also the crazy guy in the cell down there. And Hex is like, all right, fine, I guess. But he always has his mind on Hyde. And then we see in Slaughter Swamp at the home of what used to be Jonathan Rood, which was a backup story in, I believe, issue like 12 or something. He was the haunted highwayman, but now Hyde has taken it over. He's got all the chemicals that Rood had, and he's like, yes, I can make more of my formula here, using my trusty little black diamond, because, of course, the black diamond probability will never, ever end. It's good. It's fine. I think it's been enough time building up to this just basically extended fight scene of an issue, and it definitely made it interesting enough of, okay, we gave Hex a major injury early on and also took Arkham off the board in the sense that he wouldn't help with the fight. So it gave it a little bit more oomph as to when he is able to finally get the upper hand. I think it was structured well enough. Art-wise, looks great. It's very inky, very gritty. It fits the style as it always has. Honestly, don't really have many bad things to say about it. The only thing that I would critique slightly is the fact that it seems like we're going to be taking in story a few months off, but I have the feeling that next issue it's going to be like, and a few months have passed. And yeah, I get it. I understand it, but it would have been nice to see probably a few issues. I mean, obviously, I'm making up a criticism that I don't even know is true yet, but it is getting the vibe where the Hyde story feels like it would be better as an overarching where, like, we'll get back to him instead of just, we need to wrap this up as the arc ends. So that would be my only criticism. And again, I don't even know that's true, but it does feel like we're going down that path. So overall, I give this one I'll give it a 7, just a flat 7. It feels good, but it's not amazing. And it definitely feels like it's setting up more future stuff than it is wrapping up its own thing. So see where it goes from there. The Savage Hawkman number 15, written by Rob Liefeld and Frank Tieri, art by Joe Bennett. This is technically still Hawkman Wanted, but like, what even is Hawkman Wanted? So, last issue left off where Deathstroke and Hawkman were teaming up to fight against some mercenaries of Xerxes and some Thanagarians. And this issue just picks up right there with the fight scene going on. And I can't even begin to describe how nothing happens. It's fighting. We get that Pike is like taunting Deathstroke. He's like, hey, Deathstroke, was it? You're pretty good for a Pike ripoff. And he's like, Pike rip? Are you kidding? I'm going to beat you up first. So that happens. And then we see some Thanagarians fighting Hawkman. And they're like, oh, you assassin, you murderer. And Hawkman's like, you keep saying that, but I never did it. So maybe I should do it. And he rips off the wings off this Thanagarian soldier and just lets him like plummet to his death. And then we see Deathstroke threw Pike at Xerxes, because why not? And then Hawkman throws Deathstroke at a Thanagarian soldier who just like crushes his helmet in his hands. And then Hawkman's like, you know what? Maybe I am a warrior. Maybe that's where I feel like I'm most at home, is in a fight. And he just cuts off the head of one of the Thanagarians to just be like, maybe that's my deep, dark secret, that I truly am this warrior. I am the Savage Hawkman. He doesn't say it, but he may as well. So anyway, Deathstroke's like, hey, Xerxes and Pike escaped. They have a blood trail. I'm going to go track that down. And Hawkman's like, how do I contact you? And he's like, you won't. I'll tell you when I find them. Bye. So Hawkman then flies back to his safe house that he left Emma at. And he's like, Emma, are you here? And Emma's like, yes, I'm here. By the way, I've been taken hostage. So maybe, please listen to them. And we see, I'm pretty sure that it is Pike and Xerxes now wearing Thanagarian armor. And the only reason I say that is because of a later panel, but like, they do nothing to indicate that here. So Hawkman's like, oh, you don't want to be doing that. And then Shayera shows up and just be like, actually, we do. And she crushes Hawkman with like a steel girder. And we see that there are actually a bunch more mercenaries all wearing Thanagarian armor around. And Shayera just starts beating the crap out of Carter, whatever his name is. And he ends up blacking out, just saying how he's sorry for not being able to defend Emma. So when he comes to, they're underneath one of the Thanagarian warships, and Shayera is talking to Xerxes, and she's like, hey, you did what none of my men could do, and you brought me Hawkman. As such, you will get the reward of whatever money, as well as we will give you weaponry from Thanagar. Just never use it against Thanagar or its allies. If you want to fight Daemonites and Zarnians, though, totally super cool by us. And Xerxes is like, yeah, sure, whatever. I don't plan on leaving the planet. So as long as I can attack humans, we're good. Shirer's like, great, whatever. So we're going to take you and we're going to put you on the ship and we're going to get him back to the planet. And then all of a sudden the warship opens up and a new voice speaks out saying like, belay that order. We're going to take him to the area where we're going to extract the nth metal off of his body. And Shayera's like, who dares think they have authority over me, Shayera? And wouldn't you know it, the shock of the century, it is the deposed King Corsair. The guy that the entire reason Hawkman was being hunted is because he supposedly killed Corsair. I must tell you, I am shocked. Who could have seen such a twist coming? I think I said it back in issue 0. So yeah, it's this felt like Hawkman wasn't selling well enough. And so someone in editorial was just like, how about you have him cross over with like 2 other books and we'll call it an event. We'll call it Hawkman Wanted. But in actuality, it's barely going to matter. And it didn't. It really didn't. I think we're at the end of the crossover now. No, we do still have, technically we are still in Hawkman Wanted for another issue or 2, which baffles me that this is considered to be a crossover. If I'm looking at it just on its own merits, its own issue, it's not offensively bad. It's kind of bland, and obviously we saw that twist coming from a mile away of, oh, the king's not dead? Crazy. But it's not doing anything awful. It's not betraying any character that I feel attached to. It's just, who cares? Honestly, Hawkman does not feel as though it is a book that has some grand, masterful, emotional point. Like, literally, over the course of 2 pages here, Hawkman's just like, maybe I am the savage Hawkman. But, like, I don't feel like that was built to at all. I feel like that was just here, where they're like, yeah, you know, he's kind of brutal. He has a mace. Clearly he's going to whack people with it. I don't know what you want from him here. He's going to talk people down. So, yeah, I'm going to give this one a 6. It's not awful. It's just, who cares? It's completely unoffensive trash, but not in a way of, it's fast food, I guess is the best way to put it. I know it's not good for me, but who cares? Batman Incorporated number 6, written by Grant Morrison, art by Chris Burnham and Andre Guinaldo. Last issue left off with the B-team squad of Batman Incorporated being blown up by a bomb, and this issue picks up with Batman angrily driving towards where I believe the bomb was, and the police are already there. They've roped it off, and Gordon tells Batman, like, hey, they have hostages, and they only want you in there. And Batman's like, Gordon, I'm sorry about this. This is like a family thing. I'm sorting it out though. And as Batman makes his way in, we see he's called in an entire fleet of like Iron Man bat drones where they all just start crushing in the doors and whatnot and acting as Batman's lookout. And he's like, Gordon, keep everybody clear. Don't trust anybody. Leviathan is everywhere. Just, this is the last stand. Here we go. So he goes in, and apparently Talia set up this whole thing about the parable of the goat herd, which is in like 12 different images of a guy who lost a goat and goes out and finds it and something like that. Just know it's there. It's constantly popping up, but they don't really tie into anything as vocally as you would expect. So Batman's just kind of making his way through the building, trying to get to the hostages and wherever Talia is. Meanwhile, we cut to the B team, and turns out that Batwing managed to survive pretty easily, as did Knight. Halo and Looker both took the worst of the blast. They're badly injured, not doing so hot. And Squire, the Robin to Knight, is not breathing. She is functionally like dead, and Knight is freaking out about it. So Batman makes his way through the building. He reaches a spiral staircase where all of the flights of stairs have gunmen, and Talia's like, these were normal people. I gave them purpose through Leviathan. That's what you could never do. I literally turned the normal people of Gotham against you. And they all start firing. Batman sets off some concussive and gas grenades, takes them all out without killing them. And he makes his way into the next room, which of course he's just following the pictures of the goat herd thing. So we cut back to the Batcave, and there's all the Robins, Jason Todd, Nightwing, Damian, and Red Robin. And basically they're all just arguing with each other. And Red Robin is specifically like, hey, you guys do whatever. I'm currently trying to get a pinpoint on Batman and see if we can do anything from here, because he specifically told us to stay here. And Alfred shows up, and he's like, hey, Damian, you remember how you had Bat-Cow? It's only been 6 issues, and I'm giving you a new one. And he opens up a little cage that has a cat inside of it. And Damian's like, why would you think I would want this cat? And the cat starts hissing at Damian. He's like, oh, I get it. He's a dick. Okay, yeah. I'm going to name him Alfred. So at that point, Red Robin manages to lock on, or it may be without his permission, and Talia's just doing it. But basically the comm link that Talia and Batman have is coming over the Bat computer. So he makes his way into a room where a bunch of mannequins are. They all have clocks on their chests. They're bombs. We'll get to it. And he makes his way into a further room that has 3 bowls of tea. And it turns out this room had a poison gas in it, and only one of the bowls of tea has the antidote. Batman, in literally one panel, sorts it out. He's like, it's that one. Takes the sip. And as he's running back out the room again, the mannequins start exploding. Batman jumps out the window. He's immediately assaulted by a bunch of man-bat, like, soldiers, I guess. That's where the Iron Man drones come in to defend Batman. Batman busts in through another window, takes out some more average Joes who are wielding guns against him. And then he gets into a final room where it looks like Talia is sitting in the dark, but it turns out just to be a mannequin. And Talia basically says, like, Batman, Bruce, I literally could not give less of a crap about our son. I don't want Damian. I know your whole thing last issue is that he had to come back with me. I don't want him. I genuinely don't care. This whole thing, though, is about you having to choose. Either you choose to save the city or you choose to save your son. Whichever one you don't pick, I am going to kill. And so he walks out of the room. He makes his way into the next section, and we see all of the hostages tied up, ropes around their necks, all linking daisy-chained. And big hulking guy, who I happen to know is named the Heretic, but they don't name him here, so I'm just going to call him the Heretic. He's got a big boulder that is on the end of all these ropes, and he throws the boulder down the spiral staircase. The hostages all just start falling one by one. Batman is seemingly unable to save like 3 or 4 of them before he's trapped underneath the building, which starts collapsing a little bit more. We go back to Knight and Squire. Knight's like, all right, I'm really starting to freak out here, Batwing. And Batwing's like, did you hear something? I feel like there's someone up here with us. And Knight's like, all right, screw this, you're no help. And he pulls out a taser and tases Squire to start her heart again. And it works. She does come back. But Batwing is attacked by a heretic from behind, knocks him out, and then walks over to Knight. And just as Squire is coming to, he picks up Knight by the neck, squeezes it, and snaps his neck. And Squire fires off a little slingshot to damage the heretic's visor. She is, of course, very upset. And at that point, Batman manages to make it up. He lands some good shots on Heretic, but Heretic still has the upper hand strength-wise. We see a shot of the Batcave where they're all listening to Batman get the crap beat out of him. So Jason Todd's like, all right, he said that I'm in charge. He put Wingman in charge while he's out. I'm saying we're going in. Let's go. And Damian's like, yeah, I'm coming with. And Nightwing's like, no, you ain't. You're going to stay here, Damian. And he's just like, dude, literally all of this is going to happen because of me. Like, I have to be the one that saves the day here. And we see the last panel is Heretic picking up Batman, throwing him through, I guess, the final image of the goat herd thing. And he falls off the building as a whole bunch of children start showing up and attacking the police barricade. Because I kind of skipped over that because I forgot about it. Talia has basically been indoctrinating all the children of Gotham and turning them Leviathan. That was explained in an earlier issue, but she did just out and out say it here. So yeah, there's that. Obviously the major point of this issue was establishing that Talia doesn't want Damian either. It is literally all just a Sophie's choice on Batman of Gotham or his son. And in that regard, I think the issue did a decent enough job of like, okay, I'm interested. The emotional point of Knight and Squire, I think that landed very well. The only thing I think is kind of I wouldn't even say flaw, but the weirdest part of it is the whole goat herder story of like, oh, it's told in 12 parts through these images. And like every once in a while they'll interact with it and be like, ah, yes, this part of the story. But like, it feels like someone just read that book. Like Morrison just read about that fable. And he's like, oh man, that's really cool. I'm going to work that into my story. The same way that like, so many things work in like the Zodiac or tarot cards, like the major arcana. Like it felt like that sort of thing where it's like, ah, yes, these 12 things I can make represent this other thing. It's like, okay, but do you need it? Because it felt kind of just tacked on there for no particular reason. Even Talia says like, the original story is usually an ox, but I changed it to goat because that's kind of going with our theming here. So yeah, it's an iffy issue in terms of that theming, but in terms of it setting up, okay, Damian's the center of this Sophie's Choice of Batman, and Heretic is extremely strong. It set up those two well enough, and I think it did a fine job there. So I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7. It's a low 7, but it's still a 7. So we will see what happens next issue. Batman the Dark Knight number 15, written by Gregg Hurwitz, art by David Finch. Last issue left off with Scarecrow having Penguin build him a blimp, and he gassed all of Gotham on Christmas Day. Because of course he did. This issue picks up with Bruce Wayne just chilling, watching TV in bed when he flips over to the news and sees that all of Gotham has been gassed. And he's like, all right, let's get this going. So he hops out of bed, puts on the bat suit, and Alfred's like, you are way too messed up. You still should not be going out. And Batman's like, don't worry, Alfred, I'm coming prepared, as he puts on a gas mask. And then we see him in the middle of Gotham Square, and he sees how absolutely insane everyone is and like going crazy from the fear toxin. He's like, okay, maybe I'm not prepared. This is a lot going on here. I'm trying to fight them, but also protect them at the same time. What we need is an antidote. Is Robin there? And Damien's in the cave with Alfred as well. And just be like, yeah, we're both here. Do you want me out there? And he's like, no. I want you to go with Alfred. Go to Wayne Tech. I'm sending you the chemical composition of this fear toxin. Go find me an antidote and get ready to mass produce it. Wake up Lucius Fox. So they go to Wayne Tower, and Alfred's basically like, okay, so you can mass produce an antidote? And he's like, no. We have never seen this fear toxin before. It is entirely new. We would literally have to start from scratch. None of our pre-existing antidotes would work on it. And Batman calls and he's like, hey, you guys building an antidote? And Alfred's like, apparently, according to Fox, it would take months to synthesize. And Batman's like, I have minutes until Gotham is torn apart. So you wanna tell me some better news than that? And he's like, I'm sorry, Master Bruce, but without any sort of antibodies to start from, we have to do this from scratch. And at that point, Batman gets his gas mask knocked off, and he's like, wait a minute, hold on, I'm able to breathe. I don't feel the effects of the fear toxin. I have antibodies. I will be there literally in 10 seconds. And he hops into the Batjet and just crashes it into the side of Wayne Tower. And he's like, hey, thanks for getting Lucius out of here in those 10 seconds in order to go do something. So go ahead, take a sample of my blood. Let's start synthesizing stuff, and we'll go ahead and get it out there. By the way, last issue, there was a whole thing about a little girl who saw some X's on some maps. Clearly, those were not the attack points, so those must have been safe houses. So have Gordon find, maps, have the girl point at where she saw the X's, and maybe we can find some safe houses that Scarecrow's hiding out in. And Alfred's like, yep, sounds good. We'll go ahead and do that. Tiny problem. You are only one man with a limited blood supply, and as such, the antibodies will take days to multiply to the point where we can get that distributed. And Gotham's like, did I not tell you 2 minutes ago that it has literal minutes to survive? And he's like, yeah, well, I can't speed up time, Master Bruce. I don't know what you want me to do. And Batman's like, okay. The transfuser, hook it up into the Batjet directly to the aerosolizer, and we will just spray my blood all over Gotham in a breathable form, and that will cure people. Which, meta-analysis here, seems unlikely, but they're like, the only problem with that plan is they're like, in order to do that, you will have to use so much of your blood, you will actually definitely die. And Batman's still listening to the news, hearing all of Gotham tearing itself apart, and he's just like, we're going to do it. So he backs the Batjet out of Wayne Tower and sets up the spray with his blood coming out of it. And they're keeping an eye on his blood pressure system. And, his heart rate's starting to slow down, but it is working. People are de-crazifying on the streets. And as Batman's heart rate starts to slow down more and more and more, he's like, hey, I'm kind of losing consciousness here. Damien, you there? And he's like, yes, I'm there, Father. What do you need? And he's like, I need you to pilot this plane and do not take it back home until everyone is cured. Promise? And Damien's like, I promise. I'm sorry. And so his system's going into shock. He's literally unable to survive anymore. And Alfred's like, okay, he's unconscious. Bring him home now. And Damien's like, I can't. I'm sorry. I made him a promise. And we see the heart rate monitor just beep, 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 and then beep as an unconscious, seemingly dead Batman is in the cockpit of this jet, finally being flown back home. So then we get a page of Alfred with, his medical training. He's just doing everything he can to bring Batman back. Damian standing off to the side, looking sad, just hearing the heart monitor flatlining, until finally they manage to get a pulse back. And of course, Batman is fine. A day passes, maybe, and Batman's sitting at his kitchen table. Alfred brings him some food, and he's like, I don't know what you were so worried about, Alfred. And Alfred just throws the food at him, just like, you suck. You've literally put me through hell here. But then the bat signal goes up, and he looks at Damian, and Damian's like, if you don't go, I will. So turns out that they did have the girl look at all the safe houses. They pinpointed it down to one that looked familiar, and all the cops are just waiting outside because nobody wants to deal with Scarecrow at this point. But Batman's like, oh, I'll go kick in the door. So he walks up, he kicks it in. Scarecrow's just standing there. His lower jaw still disgustingly detached from his body. And Scarecrow just kind of collapses to his knees and is just like, yeah, no, I'm done. So that's that. We then see the New Year's Eve concert with his girlfriend Natalia. She's playing her piano piece and she messes up a couple of notes at one point and she feels awful about it. She's like, oh, no, I wasn't perfect. I didn't do it right. And Bruce shows up in the back after the concert and he's like, you did a great job. And she's like, I messed it up. And he's just like, it was a very complicated piece. You messed up 2 notes. Don't worry about it. How about you play it again? And she plays it again. She plays it perfectly. And he's like, there, see, all we need is a second chance sometimes. And he offers to go home, order takeout, and watch a dumb movie for New Year's. And seemingly they're totally okay. And then we get the last page, which is Scarecrow being brought into Arkham. And he's like, I've got a secret. I have more fear toxin laced into my pants. And as soon as they give me a chance, I'm going to use it and break out of here in the mass hysteria. And the officers throw him into the cell. And they throw him in such a way that the vial cracks as he's trapped into an airtight container with nothing but his own super high potency fear toxin. And so last panel is him in his cell, picturing him trapped down in his father's basement still. The end. Okay, so considering that the first arc was a little bit of Bane and a little bit of Scarecrow, and then this arc was nothing but Scarecrow, this has been now 16 issues of Scarecrow in some way, shape, or form. I'm done with it. I am done with Scarecrow. I think this was a solid arc for him. I think it did a good job of setting up different character beats. It did a great job making him sufficiently creepy. I think that gassing the city with a blimp at the end was silly, but it worked in a way. But I don't want to see Scarecrow again for at least a year. We are done with him. So overall, I'd say that this arc as a whole was pretty good, but it did lag in some points, and it was just a little bit too, oh, what does the Batman fear? I think that this last issue itself was fine. It really was more of what are the lengths Batman's willing to go to, and also Alfred's having to deal with that. So I like it. I think it was fine. I just am so tired of Scarecrow in this book now. So overall, I'm going to give this one a 7.5. Art-wise, good. Writing-wise, good. I got Scarecrow phobia. Talon number 3, written by James Tynion IV and Scott Snyder, art by Guillem March. Last issue we had them taking down a whole big bank in a hotel or something like that, and Calvin got pissed off at Sebastian because Sebastian's not being so upfront with him, and Calvin just wants to save his old girlfriend, old flame, old friend, however you want to call it, Casey. And this issue picks up with 6 years ago in New York, where Calvin is talking with Casey and saying hey, we need to get out of here. The Court of Owls could literally be anywhere. They aren't just a Gotham thing. And she's like, I'm not going to live in fear. I'm not going to keep running. I'm going to set down roots here. I'm going to build a life, and they're not going to be able to do anything about it. And he's just like, that is so stupid. They are clearly going to be able to do something about it. I can't protect you if we don't run. And she's like, I'm not asking you to protect me. You want to run? Get out of here. I will give you a constant string of new aliases as you need them because I have that ability. But we're done. Don't ever come back here again if you're just going to live on the run. So she storms off in the rain, and then we cut to present day. Same bridge where Calvin has called her up and said hey, I'm in town. I'm in New York. Let's meet back up. And Sebastian's like, this is a really bad idea. We're going in to attack one of their other financial holdings. That's the whole reason we're in New York. You should not have contacted her, especially over just normal means. And he's like, no, she inherited this whole security thing. She knows what's up. And he's just like, yeah. And the Court of Owls also inherited a bunch of the security stuff. You're being an idiot. But at that point, a blonde woman, starts walking up on the bridge. And Calvin's caught off guard as another man named Joey comes up behind him out of nowhere and strings a chain around his neck. He manages to get out of it. He flips them onto each other and just like, you guys don't look like Talons. And they're like, funny, you do. So the fight scene starts off. But before we can even really get that far, Calvin is hit in the neck with a tranq dart and he's out again. And when he comes to, he's all tied up in like normal handcuffs, and he's being talked to by a guy named Nicky. There's another guy named Edgar, and he's just like, hey, here's the thing. We don't want any trouble. We just want to ask you a few questions. And he's like, I can see that guy previously worked for Basilisk because he's got a giant snake tattoo on him. You sound like you're some kind of mafia wannabe, so I know exactly where I'm at. Where's your boss? And he's just like, oh, you're Sherlock Holmes, huh? Well, you've got an owl face on your chest, and we don't take too kindly to that. And he's just like, you don't even know who I am. And he immediately is just out of his handcuffs. He's like, I'm the kind of guy you need extra locks for. But then down from the ceiling come extra special locks. And they string up him and seemingly shock him a little bit. And out from the shadows comes Casey, along with her daughter, Sarah. And she's like 7 years old at this point. And he's like, oh, hey, mommy, it's Calvin. And Calvin's like, hey, kid. Long time no see. And she's like, why are you strung up from the ceiling? And he's just like, I bet I look silly, don't I? I need to talk to your mom. And at that point, mom comes up just being like, all right, you want to talk? Let's talk. And Casey walks her through the entire facility that they're at, which is apparently completely off the grid. They have no idea like where they specifically are. And when Calvin said he knows where he is, he just meant he knows that Casey's the one who's running things here. But apparently her entire thing is she is taking in people who are being hunted by organizations like the Court of Owls, ones that have this massive overreach and ability to find anybody, and she's taking them off the grid and allowing them to live. So she's doing all that. And basically, Calvin's like, that's great. I really believe in you, but the Court of Owls definitely knows where you are. And she's like, no, they don't. I literally have always been so careful. The only way they'd know where I am is if you did something to screw that up. But we're not idiots. We're not amateurs. And she walks into like a secret back room where her enforcers are. And just like all these people like previously worked with the best of the best. The blonde lady you saw before worked with the League of Assassins. Like, these people wanted a better life and we're helping them give it, but they're also using their talents. So at that point, they managed to hack into Sebastian's like video feed to start up a call. And Casey's like, hey, Sebastian, here's the thing. Heard about your little excursions on how you're trying to take down the Court of Owls. We are obviously very useful assets. And he's just like, yeah, why you think that? And he's like, well, we just took down Calvin. So clearly you're not as good as us. And Sebastian's like, fair enough. What do you want? And she's just like, we just want to also take down things like the Court of Owls. But also, you're draining their financial accounts. Just funnel it over to us. We're going to use that money to give these people a better life. And Sebastian's like, fine, I'm listening. So the next day, they set up the plan that Sebastian wanted to set up anyway, but this time with the added measure of they can get in and get out without even having to fight the Talon, which is providing security for this place. His name is Roger Black. And basically, Sebastian goes in wearing one of those light face mesh things that we saw in Batman #1, I think, where it provides a completely different facial structure and it's undetectable on scans. So he gets scanned into the bank as a Mr. Luciano, who's planning on making some major deposits here. The bank owner steps up. He's just like, oh, yes, so sorry about security. And Luciano's like, hey, as long as it keeps away the riffraff, you know? And at that point, the League of Assassins girl, who's only named Miss Volkova, I think she gets an actual full name later, but for now it's Volkova. She comes in, stages a stick-up of the bank, and Calvin's like, oh, Mr. Bank Manager, there's a stick up. If you want me to feel safe, go deal with that. And he's like, oh, right away, sir. So that gives Calvin some time alone in the vaults. We see Joey has snuck in through the building in order to provide him some hacking material and his costume, because of course he has to wear his costume. And they hack into the bank and start draining all the accounts and whatnot. At a certain point, they're like, okay, all right, we're doing good. We don't even have to deal with the Talon guy. The Talon guy's off busy doing his own thing. So yeah, we can get in, get out, no problem. And Calvin looks out the window to see where his escape hatch is going to be. He's like, all right, yeah, it's like a 30-foot drop, no problem. But as he does so, he's grabbed by the face of a Talon hand. And wouldn't you know, it's the Gotham Butcher who was woken up at the end of last issue. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Rose, you're not leaving that way. So, yeah, he's huge. He's absolutely enormous. And does not look good for Calvin. I like it. I think it sets up a good cast of characters. This is kind of the secondary team. It's setting it up at a good pace where the 0th issue was literally just Calvin. Then we set up Sebastian in issue 1. We showed them working together in issue 2, showing how that dynamic works out. And now we're setting up this extra tertiary cast of characters of other people who are able to help Calvin out in the field because they have these skills. I think it's doing a decent job. It's not really a team book. It still is more focused on Calvin, but it's setting up this cast that is able to be developed on more. And I think they're doing a good job of setting it up. Not all at once where I'm feeling overwhelmed, but just, drip fed. I'm getting a little bit here, a little bit there. So I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7.5. And I think a lot of that comes down to I like the pacing of it, and I especially like the ending because I genuinely didn't see it coming. By the time it hit the last page, and it was just like, oh, okay, this guy's here now. It did feel like it came out of right field. So nice to see it's a little bit unpredictable. So yeah, 7.5 for this. Looking forward to next issue. The Flash, number 15, written by Francis Manapul and Brian Buccellato, art by Francis Manapul and Marcus Toe. Last issue, we left off with Grodd about to kill Flash, but then a time-traveling gorilla named Solivar jumped in the way. Yep, so this issue picks up right in that same spot. And Patty learned about Barry being the Flash. That was another thing. So Grodd's like, I've killed them both. I've managed to do it. And Patty throws some rocks at Grodd, like, oh, you big meanie, how dare you? I'm not leaving here without Barry. And Grodd turns to see who's throwing rocks at him, but then he starts getting weakened because he's losing his Speed Force energy, and he needs to go get some more. So at that point, Turbine, who's also there, is like, oh, your rock throwing seems to be doing something. I'll speed it up a little bit. So he uses his Turbine abilities to throw even more rocks at Grodd until he retreats. And Patty runs over to Barry, and Solivar's like, hey, remember what I said, Patty? And Patty's like, yeah, I remember. He's like, okay, but I'm still going to say it. Remember, the mind will always be faster. And Solivar ends up dying, but Barry maybe might just be okay. So then we see military outside of Central City, and remember that the white gorilla is putting up this mental image that the city is doused in radioactive materials, so nobody else is coming in. And then we go to the white gorilla who's using the brain power of an entire stadium of people, and just like, well, I'm doing the best I can. And they're like, well, what happens if it falters? Or like, civilization figures out we can't fight back all of men. And then the gorillas are like, yes, we can, because we have King Grodd to help us. So, yeah, there's that. Then we cut over to the rogues, who are like, okay, we need to go save the people. And our plan is we're going to use the mirror dimension. You good, Mirror Master? And Mirror Master's there. He's just like, yeah, no, totally, bring him on in. So then we see Grodd making his way down to Dr. Elias's lab, where he's already seemingly bitten open a bunch of the vials of Speed Force energy, and he's got the last one there, and he's like, oh, I need it, and I have to kill the Flash in order to make it a permanent change. Then somewhere else in the fight, we have Iris's brother. I think it's Daniel. He's running, and he's like, "Oh, Iris!" As he's attacked by a gorilla. Literally amounts to nothing. And then we get, I guess, the biggest part of the issue, which is outside of the gorilla perimeter of Central City. We see Barry is being kept up at Manuel, the guy from like the first arc, his mom's house, and they're keeping him there safe while Patty's looking over him. And he's in a coma, and everyone's just like, okay, so if/when Barry wakes up, it'll be our like last stand. Like, we're bringing in all the cops, retired rookies, in order to stand up against the gorillas, but we really, really need Flash to be there. So here's hoping he wakes up soon. And then we see he's got like, he thinks he's dying, but in actuality, he's using his like Speed Force mental powers to process through a bunch of different series of events. And we see one series of events in yellow, one in red, and one in blue. And each one is following just like a different path of events they can take down. One where they attack the stadium, one where they attack the Elias's lab, and one where they attack Grodd directly. And we just see all the different events playing out and how each one would go. We see the one where they attack Grodd directly fail first. Barry is just stabbed through the chest and Grodd wins. The one where they are attacking the stadium where everyone is, it seemingly also fails because the group of people that are all hooked up to the same mental thing would all have their minds fried, and it would also end up with Patty dying, which is not an option he wants to do. And then we see the option where it seems like they're going to Dr. Elias's lab, and it's this whole extra thing that seems like it may take over the course of many weeks, if not years, because we see a Patty that has like scars on her face. So clearly she's been in this fight for a while, but in the end, they do end up on the blue path succeeding. And Barry's like, wait a minute, hold on, okay. Keep playing this out, keep taking it to the end. I mean, it's not going to be that we win without a scratch, but we can still manage to take out Grodd. And it seems that in this path, Barry might have to give up Patty in some way, though it looks like he's just going to be going into the Speed Force along with Grodd. And he's like, he shoots up out of bed. He's like, oh, Patty, I got it. I figured it out. The only way to win is to turn himself over to Grodd. And that's the issue. I will say, obviously, you cannot view it that way, but the pages of him going through the Speed Force mental thing are literally like an 8-page spread. Like, just one after another, they all fold into each other of this, just this branching timeline path of following the different events. So it's beautiful looking, it's fantastic, but it really is just kind of the only point of the issue, because pretty much everything else here is just like, just marking time. Like, every single plot got exactly 1 page, save for this big thing where it's a whole bunch of like triple page spreads. So in that regard, it kind of feels like a skippable issue, but I do think that artistry-wise and the story they're telling, it is a necessary one, in that this is probably the turning point in, I mean, Patty knows that Flash is Barry and Barry is Flash. They walked through this whole plan of now Barry's on the offensive. He's going to be doing something in order to fight back against Grodd. It seems like this is the major turning point, but it does feel that not a lot gets accomplished in this issue. So overall, I'm going to say 7. It's good. It's just as good as Flash really has been. It's perfectly fine issue. I'd say the only critique I really have is I know we're setting up Daniel West for future things, but it does feel completely superfluous at this point because they have not managed to fold him into anything that matters. So that would be the only thing I would just straight up cut. But everything else here is doing fine. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the Rogues manage to finally tie into the whole thing. So yeah, 7. The Fury of Firestorm, number 15, written and art by Dan Jurgens. Last issue we left off with Dr. Megala transferring his consciousness into the Firestorm body, and Captain Atom showing up in front of General Eiling saying like, hey, I'm here to help. So this issue picks up with Ronnie and Jason both waking up in like the void of the quantum field, just a total blackness. And they're like, if you're not driving and I'm not driving, who's driving our body right now? And we flash over to Dr. Migala, and it's literally just his janky old face on the Firestorm body, and he's just like, oh my god, I have so much power. Hold on, I gotta test this out. And he looks around and he sees a passenger jet nearby, and he's just like, I want to see if I can just like phase right through it. And he just goes and just phases through the airplane, and he's being watched by his like fellow scientists in the continuum, and they're just like, hey, does he seem kind of crazy? And this is like, yeah, I think he's a little bit crazy. And they're like, oh, okay, well, maybe we shouldn't have let him have unbelievable power. And then he goes down to Mount Rushmore, and he's like, they always said that if you had incredible power, you could move mountains. I'm instead just going to transmute the mountains. And he changes the president's faces to people he thinks are more deserving, the greatest minds of all time. So he changes it to Galileo, Newton, Einstein, and then the fourth is himself, of course. So then we cut back to Ronnie and Jason. They're inside and just be like, okay, so someone else is currently driving our body. How do we, I bet it had to do with that robot that attacked us. And it's like, yeah, good job, Ronnie. Definitely had to do with the robot that attacked us. So they're like, all right, we're still in the body. So there must be some way that we can push him out. We just got to bide our time. So we cut back to General Eiling, who's talking to Captain Atom. And he's just like, oh, hey, Captain Atom, thought you would have killed yourself by now. And he's like, it's nice to see you too, Eiling. Anyway, there's the thing called Firestorm going on right now, and they're super dangerous. And he's just like, oh, super dangerous. Like you, Mr. Can cause and also cure cancer. And he's just like, yeah, sure. Anyway, so apparently immediately this guy rushes in. He's like, General Eiling, apparently there was a firestorm who rearranged Mount Rushmore. And he's just like, oh, so do you believe me now? And he's like, fine, whatever, Captain Atom, what do you want to do? So then we see the country of Karak is launching off nuclear missiles, and Firestorm's just like, oh, you know what? Screw that country. How dare they try to intimidate us with nuclear missiles? I'm gonna transform their missile into a Rubik's Cube. And the scientists are continuing. We're like, I'm pretty sure that interfering with that would be a declaration of war. And he's just like, I'm a god now, so I don't care. So then we see at the USS Independence, a massive aircraft carrier, there's apparently a mole that as soon as Migala changes the missile into a Rubik's Cube, it is a declaration of war. So this guy who is a Karaki mole then activates a bomb on the side of this aircraft carrier, blows it up. And again, immediately General Eiling gets the report of like, sir, there's been an explosion on the USS Independence. And at that point, Captain Atom's like, all right, well, I stopped in here just to see if you could give me any information. And seems like you can't, so I'm just going to peace out. Bye. So he goes over to the continuum because he figures that's where Migala's going to be. And he pops in and he's like, hey, Migala, how did you manage to take over Firestorm? And he sees Migala's just like comatose because his body currently doesn't have a consciousness in it. And he's like, oh, okay, consciousness transfer. Got it. All right. I know what I got to do. So he teleports out and then teleports right next to Migala. And they just start getting into a fist fight. And Migala's like, hey, I'm just on your level now, Captain Atom. We had a whole book that got canceled where I just wanted to be on your level, and now I am. So shut up. And he's just like, hey, we have too much power. Like each of us individually, we should not be able to do the things we should do. And he's just like, I'm not going to be lectured by you. So he fires off some energy blast at Captain Atom. It's barely doing anything. But then Jason and Ronnie are like, hold on. He's expelling a lot of energy. If he expels enough, maybe, just maybe, we can make the push to take back over the body. So he's blasting a whole lot of energy at Captain Atom. He thinks that he's managed to incinerate him, but of course Captain Atom just shows up behind him and pushes his hand through Miguel's chest, and he's just like, you have only had this body for a short period of time. You don't know all the quirks yet, like managing to maintain your physical form with all this energy. And so at that point, we see that his form starts cracking apart, and that's where Ronnie and Jason make the push, and they start like, hey, we're inside your head. We're a bunch of teenagers in your head, and it's too much energy for Miguel to handle, basically setting off an explosion that like causes a tidal wave on that aircraft carrier, which I really got to point out here is that the Mount Rushmore is in the Dakotas, Karak's on the other side of the world, and then this aircraft carrier is probably in U.S. waters in between. I don't understand how he's getting to these places so quickly, but regardless, he is. So Jason and Ronnie are like, hey, so do you remember like Fury and how we weren't able to control Fury, but we were able to like guide him and push him? Maybe we can do that now with Miguel. Maybe we can like push him back to where his body is, so that way we can then get him out of our body. And I was like, all right, worth a shot. So they're trying to just talk to him through his head, just like, hey, Miguel, hey, how about you head back to the science lab? How about you go back there? And he's like, shut up, I'm dealing with Captain Atom right now. And so they continue to get into a fight, and he's blasting more and more energy at Captain Atom. It's not doing anything, but Captain Atom's like, you're not doing anything to me, but you are still too powerful. You could have just obliterated a city with that much power. I'm going to take you down. And Captain Atom fires off a shot at him. They both start to charge up Super Saiyan style. And he's just like, oh, this is it. This is the final battle. And they start charging at each other. But because Miguel is using so much energy, he's finally able to be brought into the quantum field with Jason and Ronnie. And then they just punch him in the face in there. And because Miguel is now out for the count, Ronnie starts taking over the body again. And he's just like, hey, I'm back in the body. Captain Atom, for the love of God, please stop charging me. I'm back in the body now. And he's like, sorry, kid, I believe you, but I'm moving too quick. This is going to happen. And they collide into this massive, like, nuclear bomb-sized explosion. But it turns out that Captain Atom did manage to pull back a little bit of his punch, but he had to pull it back into himself. So his energy structure is now not stable. It starts rupturing, and he starts exploding out into a million pieces that rupture throughout time and space. And we see one of the pieces has made their way to the 31st century, where it lands, and he has amnesia. And when someone asks, like, hey, are you okay? What's your name? He says, wait, I remember that. My name is Adam. And if you've been reading Legion Lost, there is a character with a mysterious background in that book named Adam that this now fully explains. I did not expect this to be a tie-in to Legion Lost, but here we goddamned are. So, anyway, Firestorm also got hit in the explosion. Ronnie's out for the count. Jason's in his head being like, wake up, you gotta wake up, as he plunges down into the ocean. End of issue. Why did this tie into Legion Lost? Was this just the thing that's always been? Did Captain Atom always have a part in Legion? I'm so confused. Anyway, ignoring all that, I think this played out as well as it could have. I don't think we needed to spend any more time with Miguel as Firestorm. I think it did a decent enough job of saying, hey, look, he got the powers. He went a little bit crazy with it. Captain Atom showed up and immediately was just like, nah, we're done with this now. And through a combination of Captain Atom and Jason and Ronnie, they managed to take back the body. I think that's good in that it wasn't all Captain Atom. It did allow our main characters to do something actually active rather than passive. So yeah, I think it's a solid enough issue. I'd give this one I'm going to give it a 6.5, and the only reason I'm not giving it a 7 is because that Legion Lost things felt so random and so just like, ah, yes, you didn't see that one coming, did you? And it's like, no, but that doesn't make it good. Why was that it's gonna bug me. So yeah, 6.5. We'll see what happens to Firestorm next issue. I, Vampire number 15, written by Joshua Hale Fialkov, art by Dennis Calero. Last issue we left off with a magic user named Charles is turned into a vampire because Andrew is building a new army. And this issue picks up with the three of them, Andrew, Tig, and Charles, at the home of the Van Helsings at their manor. And it is protected by a magic spell thing. And Charles is there. He's going to cast a spell to basically bring it all down. And they're just like, are you sure this is a good idea? And he's just like, yeah. Have I ever steered you wrong before? And Tig's like, yes, constantly. That's like all you do. And he's like, all right, well, shut up. We're going to go ahead and do it right this time. So they take down the defensive spell, and immediately they are opened fire upon by a group of men on the wall with a machine gun of stakes, as far as I could tell. But they just bounce off the attacks using more spells, and they make their way in, just completely decimating the entire group. And as we see the entirety of the Van Helsing group scramble, they come to the doors and they see there's a dog there, and they're like, okay, well, orders are orders, kill the dog, I guess. And then it turns out that it is the dog that was turned by Andrew, and it leaps up and attacks them. So inside we see that they're scrambling, trying to figure out what to do, and Andrew just walks in the door and he's just like, hey guys, I just came here, just had a few little questions, and I just want to talk now that I've made it inside. And they start firing off all their stakes. He's just like, guys, you honestly think that's going to work? And the one guy stands, he's like, all right, hold your fire, we're just wasting wood. And he's like, who are you? He's like, I'm the new number 2. You kind of indisposed our number 1. And he's like, well, I remember tearing him apart into multiple pieces about 12 times and forcing him to regenerate. So, yeah, that was when I was a good guy. Maybe you don't want to come up to me now. All I am is looking for something. And a voice in the darkness is like, maybe I can help you. And it turns out it's this big hulking brute guy. And he's just like, you don't remember me, do you? And he's like, did I date your sister or something? And he's like, no, I'm the one who you tore apart 12 times. You want to go for 13? And Andrew just starts clapping. He's just like, bravo, guys. If you guys ever got into the habit of a vampire army, you really would do a good job. Anyway, I don't really need your help that badly, so I'm just going to go get what I need. And as he tries to walk off, the big guy goes and attacks him, and he just turns into mist. So outside, Tig and Charles have taken care of the entirety of the defenses. And they're like, so, you think Andrew's got everything under control? And Andrew and the big guy just bust through the ceiling of the building and just like, yeah, seems totally under control to me. So then we cut over to the B team of Deborah, Mary, and John. And they made their way to the place that Andrew died. And they're going to use... John has some Native American magic. They're going to use that in order to call back the soul of Andrew and talk to it and discover who the person who turned him was. So they use the Native American magic, but turns out Andrew's not the one who comes back. It's his driver for his carriage that was attacked that night. And the carriage driver's like, oh, Mary, it's you're a servant wench. What are you doing dressed like that? And he's just like, yeah, no time to explain that. Bartholomew is his name. Could you just tell us what you saw that night? And he's like, there was a shape. It appeared out of nowhere. It transformed into a beast. And, oh, I died. And it's all your fault, Mary, because you were the one that we were going after. And apparently Andrew said that she was a monster even before he got turned. And Bartholomew starts fading away, saying that she's unclean, that she's nothing but a whore, and Andrew recognized that. And Mary's like, I don't understand. He wrote a note saying that like we couldn't be together, but crap, he wrote the note after he got turned. What did he think of me before he got turned? And Mary's genuinely caught off guard by this, but it's like, okay, well, let's just fix Andrew, and then you can ask him himself. Either way, he probably would have run towards the estate, so maybe we should go that way. So they make their way closer to Andrew's estate. Meanwhile, the fight continues on between the big hulking guy and Andrew. He's landing some good punches on Andrew, and Tig tries jumping in. He also punches her. And then at that part, Charles is like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill you because you attacked Tig," and Andrew's like, "I'm sure you would, but we gotta bail." So they just make their way deeper into the archives of the Van Helsing estate without pretty much anyone being able to stop them. So then we meet up with Mary and them again, and as they're making their way closer to the place, they see a circle where just nothing is growing, like the ground itself has been poisoned. And John's about to set up a new thing of the Native American magic, but a voice behind him tells him, "Don't bother. It will not work here." And turns out it's Cain. And Cain is now human. He has been deprived of all of his vampire-ness because of Andrew's actions in the event where the rise of Cain. And now he's just here and he's like, "Yep, it's me. I'm Cain. Also, I'm the guy you're looking for. I'm the person who turned Andrew into a vampire." So then we meet up with Andrew and the gang again. They made their way deep into the archives. There's a guy defending it. He's like, "I will die before I let you have any of these books." And they're like, "K," and they just kill him and like suck the life out of him. And then they end up finding a book that they're looking for, which is the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And they activate the book in some way, which turns into a pocket dimension that the Van Helsings use to store every weapon that they think could destroy vampires. And now it is all at their disposal. Welcome to the armory. So, as I said last issue, this is the first issue that Andrea Sorrentino is not doing the art on. I think that Dennis Calero did a fantastic job of imitating the style while also making it his own. It is still just as moody. I still feel like this is Andrew, which was always my problem when Andrew appeared in things like Justice League Dark. The art style there did no favors to him. But I think that it imitates it well enough. It looks fantastic still. I really do not have any issue with it. So, in terms of the plot, we got a lot done this issue. We set up, Mary may not know Andrew's true feelings for her. We set up that they know Cain is the sire. Cain is also human now. And they got to the Van Helsing armory. So, a lot moving forward, a lot of moving parts. Really enjoying this. I'm going to give this one an 8.5. Fantastic issue overall, and I really cannot fault it for much of anything. So, see how it continues next time. Justice League Dark number 15, written by Jeff Lemire and Ray Fox, art by Miguel Janin. Last issue left off with the whole team basically saying, "Okay, we gotta go get Zatanna and Timothy Hunter," because they teleported out at the end of whatever event that was. And this issue picks up saying, "Okay, where are they?" And we come across this dude in like a mech suit that kind of looks Green Lantern-y. He's called Officer Vicker. And basically they're like, "Hey, someone just teleported. That's a Class B crime. Go and arrest them, Officer Vicker." And he's like, "Will do." And we see the people who teleported are, of course, Timothy and Zatanna. They just show up in the middle of the woods, and the caption says they're in the wild area, which I guess is the name for the whole thing. I don't know. But regardless, as soon as they land, like, immediately they are attacked by a giant, and Zatanna uses her magic and is like, "Giant, get out of here." And it causes a huge effect. And she's like, "Whoa, okay, I'm feeling like super powerful for some reason." And another giant shows up and she starts attacking that one as well. And she's like, "Oh my God, this place, it's got so much magic in it. You got to feel this, Timothy." And Timothy's like, I don't want to do the magic thing." And she's like, "Right, sorry. Yeah, it just feels really good. Just know that." And so then Officer Vickers shows up and he's like, "Hey, you guys committed a Class B felony. I will bring you in for questioning. And she's just like, hey, we don't know what you're talking about. We just want to get home. We have no idea what happened. And he's like, oh, enough of your lies, witch. I'm going to take you in before you can do anything. And so she starts blasting him with magic. And he immediately, his suits are like, you can't handle that much magic. Like, it is overloading your system. And so maybe you could take a sample and get out of there. And he's like, negative, I'm going down. And so at that point, we cut back to Constantine talking to Dr. Was it Johnny Peril? I think it is. Yeah. And he's looking over the books. He's trying to figure out what's up. And Constantine's just giving him a hard time, just being like, we really, really need to get in there. So tell me your science can do something that our magic can't. And he's just like, need you to back off a little bit. Need you tiny little bit. Look, here's the thing. Do you have any of the boys' blood? And he's like, no, I don't have. Why would I have any of the blood? He's like, hey, I would not put it past you, Constantine. But here's the thing. I've analyzed this, and yes, we need his magical signature, but there also is like a 23,000 encrypted lock. And it just so happens that that's how many proteins are in this boy's chromosomes. So, kind of a blood lock. We need his blood. And Constantine's like, okay, if I get you a nearby relative, would that work? And he's like, I guess, maybe. He's like, all right, well, get everybody prepped. I'm going to go get his dad, BRB. So then we're going back to Zatanna, who's currently blowing the armor off of this guy and apparently committing a whole bunch of new felonies in the process as the guy's comms keep on throwing out new things. And finally, Timothy is like, Zatanna, maybe stop. You look like you're hurting him. And at that point, it distracts her enough that he's able to get a shot off on Zatanna, takes her down. And then these hands start coming out of the ground and start pulling Timothy and Zatanna down before Vicar can do anything about it. And he's like, all right, well, they just disappeared. I think it was wood nymphs. Either way, if we want to fight them some more, I'm going to need some upgrades to my armor. And they're like, 10-4, come on in for it. So then we see Zatanna and Timothy are being brought down into this underground cavern by a bunch of wood nymphs and other mystical-looking characters. And they were like, is it true? Are you him? Are you the one we've been waiting for? And Timothy's like, what? I don't, who? And they're like, Hunter, Hunter, Hunter. So yeah, he's Hunter. Cutting back to Nanda Parbat, Constantine's brought Timothy's dad, and he's like, hey, so you guys say my boy's missing. And they're like, yeah, we're trying to help go find him right now, but we need a bit of your blood. And he's like, all right, well, if it'll help find my son. So he rolls up his sleeve, gives off some blood, and basically Black Orchid asks Constantine, like, do you know what we're getting into here? And he's like, no, I have no idea. But hey, expect the worst and you'll never be disappointed. So they use Dr. Mist's powers as he's being possessed by Dead Man, and they use the blood from Timothy's dad to basically open the portal, but they straight up say, this is only temporary. We don't know when it's going to close. Best guess, you have like 48 hours, and then the portal may never open up again. So really go for it. So they go through, and they all teleport into basically the same point where Timothy and Zatanna were. But as soon as they arrive, everyone's just like, something's wrong here. And starts off with Xanadu. She's an immortal. As soon as she gets there, she immediately looks old. She's ancient looking. She's like, what's going on with me? Black Orchid, who normally is very humanoid looking, starts billowing up into this giant, like, monstrous sized thing, though still has all the same mental capacity. She's like, I'm good. I don't know what happened, but I'm now like a monster. Dead Man keeps on trying to interject, just being like, hey, guys, something I need to say, because he's not in Mist's body, he's in his own body. But then as Constantine pipes up, he's like, wait a minute, I can't lie, because he openly admits to being afraid and to not knowing what's going on. He's like, oh, geez, I can't lie, that's not good. But then Dead Man finally shuts him up for a second. He's like, dude, do you get it? This was my outfit. I'm no longer dead. I'm alive again. And he takes off his mask, and you see that it's just Boston Brand wearing the outfit again. And he's like, I'm alive. And then he's immediately shot in the head. I'm not kidding. He is shot in the head by Officer Vicar, who's shown back up in even bigger armor. And he's like, hey, your friends caught me off guard the first time, but I'm prepped now. So stand down or we're going to have problems. And that's where the issue ends off. I feel so bad for Dead Man. I mean, I'm sure we're going to have a little bit more with that, but just the fact of like, I'm a lot, like, it seems like a South Park joke more than anything else, but it's so good. No, I think this was a solid issue. I think it set up some interesting new settings of whatever these wildlands are. They clearly have their own science versus magic sort of thing going on, with Vicar seemingly on the science side, whereas these wood nymphs or whatever got their own thing going on. It seems interesting to me. It seems like a good start to a new story. We got a time deadline on it in 48 hours. Of course, in comics, that could literally be like 12 issues. So we'll see how long it takes. But I am excited by this new arc. I think that it's going to be an interesting story to tell. So overall, I'm going to give this one a 8. I think it is very good. I am looking forward. Mikel Janen's art, fantastic as always. But yeah, next issue hopefully won't disappoint. And that's it. That's all the comics that came out this January 2nd, 2013. Feels weird to say that, despite the fact that I said that for a whole year 10 years ago, but feels weird to say it again instead of 2012. So forgive me if I ever make a mistake on that. But I am going to go ahead and wrap this up here. Don't really have much more to say. Said it all in the beginning. So let's take a look at what's coming out next week. Next week, we have 13 comics, including the number 16 issues of Detective Comics, Batwing, Action Comics, Green Arrow, Stormwatch, Animal Man, and Swamp Thing. We have the number 8 issues of Earth 2, World's Finest, and Dial H, the number 4 issue of The Phantom Stranger, and the second issue of Human Bomb. And just when you thought that's not enough, we also have the first annual of Green Lantern New Guardians, which I believe is tying into the Rise of the Third Army stuff. So it is a packed week, even though it's only 13 comics. We got a lot going on. So I hope to see you at that episode. But before that, hey, did you know we had a Twitter? Did you know we had a Discord? Did you know we had a Patreon? We do. We do all those things, and the links are in the description to all of them. Check them out, and in the case of Patreon, give us money. You know, for your New Year's resolution of giving people more money. That is what you resolved, right? Anyway, that'll do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Hope to see you in the next episode, and always remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.